Mushrooms and mud. Beryl's tummy rumbled loudly. I'm starving, she whined. How much farther is it? To where? Asked Amber. To where we can get something to eat, moaned Beryl. We can eat here, said Amber, gesturing around. Really? Said Beryl, looking around. Where? Through here. Amber pointed with her snout and trotted off the path and into the undergrowth. Beryl hesitated. She watched Amber disappear into the bushes. Was this a wild pig trick? But Beryl's tummy rumbled again, and that made up her mind. Wait for me, she called, putting her head down and pushing through the bushes to where Amber had disappeared. It was so thick that Amber and Beryl had to fight their way through. They heaved and pushed through the dense foliage and then suddenly burst out into a clearing where hundreds of brilliantly colored flowers carpeted the ground. Amber stopped and sniffed the air. Yup, she said, with a sparkle in her eye. I think this is a perfect spot for lunch. And with that, Amber started to burrow and dig in the soft ground. Beryl stared at Amber digging and grunting in the dirt. What are you doing? She cried. Looking for lunch, said Amber. Isn't this what you do? Absolutely not, snorted Beryl. She flung her snout in the air with a snort of disgust. I eat out of a trough. I don't know what a trough is, said Amber, and digging at the ground, she unearthed a large muddy root. Look, it's really juicy. Try it, you'll like it, she encouraged and pushed it toward Beryl. Beryl's tummy moaned. She hadn't eaten anything since the night before, and for Beryl, that was an awfully long time. At the farm, the trough was replenished throughout the day, and although she had to wait until her cousins had finished, they never quite managed to eat all the food, even though they tried very hard. So Beryl had never really gone hungry. She edged suspiciously toward the root. What if this little pig was trying to poison her? She looked at Amber, who was lazily chewing at a bit of the root that had broken off. Beryl felt relieved. If Amber was eating it, it must be all right. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and sank her teeth deep into the root. The juice from the root filled Beryl's mouth. It was so sweet. It was as though Beryl had never tasted anything before in her life. And in a way, she hadn't. The pellets at the farm were tasteless. The flavor of the root took Beryl over. She could have been anywhere with anyone. It would have made no difference. She was drifting on a cloud high up in the sky. The only thing in the whole world to Beryl was the sweet flavor of the juicy root. She chewed and chewed and chewed. At last she opened her eyes and looked at Amber with droopy eyelids and a lopsided smile. Do they all taste like that? She asked. Sort of, said Amber, smiling. Look, here's a mushroom. You have to be careful of these, 'cause some of them are poisonous. As they wandered along in the sun, munching, Beryl let its rays melt her aches away. She loved the warmth of the sun on her back as she strolled along. But as it got stronger and hotter, her skin began to get pinker and pinker. It's awfully hot, she panted after a while. You're getting sunburned, said Amber. I know just the thing. She led Beryl down to a stream with a wide, muddy bank. Amber waded into the mud up to her belly. I don't think I want to go in there, said Beryl warily. Her skin was feeling very hot and prickly. Trust me, it's lovely, Amber smiled. Although Amber seemed to be kind, Beryl still didn't really trust this little wild pig. She decided to keep her distance, going in a bit upstream, so Amber couldn't ambush her if she got stuck in the mud. Gingerly, she took her first steps into the mud. It was very cold, but as it reached her sunburned skin, it took all the heat out of it. Soon, she was deep in the mud and rolling about. It was so cool and soothing, it took her painful sunburn right away. It's so wonderful, she sighed. Does it always feel like this? No, said Amber, frowning. Sometimes it's awful. Really? Gasped Beryl. No, said Amber, laughing. They puttered back up to the path, Beryl stopping for a few more mushrooms. She tried to dig up a root, but her snout, unaccustomed to digging, was too sore, so Amber dug it up for her. Suddenly, Beryl realized that they were standing close enough to touch. Amber smiled at her, and Beryl relaxed. Your nose will get used to it, encouraged Amber gently. We're nearly home now. It's just through the archway. Amber's home. They stopped in the archway. Beryl had a good view over the whole settlement. You live here? She said. She hadn't really thought about what Amber's home would be like. So very different from the farm. It was just an area hollowed out of the forest. There were no buildings or walls or gates or concrete. "It looks lovely," Beryl said. "Isn't it the same as yours?" asked Amber. "No," said Beryl. She went on to tell Amber about the farm, Aunt Misery and her cousins, the farmer and the truck, Gruff and the other pigs, and finally, her lucky escape. As she came to the end of her story, Beryl looked up. Amber was staring at her in stunned silence. It was quite some time before Amber could say anything at all. "That's awful," she said at last. "Where do you think they were taking you?" "I don't know," said Beryl. It seemed so long ago now. She thought about Gruff and the others and wondered what might have happened to them. "At least you're safe now, and you can come and live with us," Amber said, smiling. "Us?" asked Beryl. "Oh, with your mom, you mean?" "No, she's dead," said Amber. Then looking at Beryl, she quickly added, "I didn't know her. She died when I was born." "My mom died too," said Beryl excitedly, then realizing it sounded as if she was glad her mother was dead, when really she meant she was glad that she and Amber had something in common. She added, "I didn't know my mom either. She died when I was born too." "Then we'll be sisters," said Amber, smiling. "Yes," Beryl beamed. "That's why we look so alike," they both giggled. Suddenly, Beryl stopped as a thought hit her. "How many sisters and brothers have you got?" she asked warily. She didn't know any other pigs apart from herself who didn't have brothers or sisters. "None. I'm an only pig," said Amber. "Me too," said Beryl. "We really are alike." "Twins," laughed Amber, and Beryl burst out laughing too. They both laughed and chuckled together. Beryl had never laughed so much in her life, and tears welled up in her eyes. She laughed and laughed until her ribs hurt, and she could hardly catch her breath. After a while, she didn't even know why she was laughing. It just felt so good. All the stress and tension melted away as her shoulders shook and shook. Eventually, it subsided, and Beryl was left exhausted. She and Amber leaned on each other, gasping for breath and still letting the odd chuckle out. They stayed like that until they were breathing evenly at last. As they stood under the ark, recovering, something unsettling occurred to Beryl. "How many pigs did you say you lived with?" she asked Amber soberly. "I didn't. I can count them up if you want," Amber replied merrily, and started to count in her head. But just then, a large wild pig came wandering into view. Beryl tried to duck behind Amber. "Oh my goodness, it's huge!" squealed Beryl, peeking out from behind Amber. "That's a real wild pig. Not like you. You're little and cute. That's a wild, wild pig. Look at its huge pointed tusks. It's enormous and ugly and savage. It's the sort of wild pig I was warned about. It'll tear me into little bits and eat me up. It'll give me the plague. I can't possibly stay here," she cried with terror, looking into Amber's eyes. Amber grunted unhappily. "That's my Uncle Bert." Uncle Bert. "Come on, he won't eat you," Amber said. Even though Beryl seriously doubted this, she realized she had little choice but to trust her new friend. She followed Amber hesitantly down into the settlement. "Hello, Uncle Bert. This is Beryl. She's come to stay with us," said Amber. "Hello, my dear," said Uncle Bert. Beryl peeked out from behind Amber. "Hello," she said nervously. "Oh, dear," said Uncle Bert as he saw Beryl properly. "This'll put the cat among the pigeons." "I'm afraid you can't stay here, my dear. I know it must seem unfriendly, but you see, as pigs keep telling me, rules are rules." "What do you mean?" asked Amber. "You know the rules, Amber," said Uncle Bert. "Whatever I might think of them, apparently they are there to protect us. Rule number 1, no other type of animals allowed into the settlement." "But Beryl's a pig, Uncle Bert," cried Amber. "She's not another type of animal. Look at her. She's been through a terrible time. She's motherless. We're motherless sisters. She needs our help." "What must you think of us, my dear?" His whole face lit up with a mischievous twinkle. Beryl found it impossible to be frightened of this kindly, stocky boar. "It's not fair," said Amber. "You're quite right, of course, Amber. Come on, we'd better talk about it somewhere more private. We'll go to my den." He looked around nervously. "You have to realize it's not as simple as just bending the rules. It's much more difficult than that." They trotted off behind him toward his den, Uncle Bert looking anxiously around the whole time. But just before they reached the den entrance, another large wild pig came ambling into the settlement. Beryl had been scared of Amber at first and frightened of Uncle Bert from afar, but this new pig had a really dangerous air about it that Beryl couldn't ignore. The hairs on her back rose, and she felt her whole body stiffen. He had a belligerent gait as he stomped into sight. There was something so grimly unpleasant about this pig that he seemed to give off waves of badness. They rolled over to Beryl like a rotten stench. "Darn it, it's that old boar Gerald," whispered Uncle Bert, nudging them aside. "Come on, quickly, before he sees you." Beryl quickly ducked out of sight with Amber, but they were too slow. "Bert!" Gerald yelled. "What's going on over there? That wasn't what I think it was it?" He started lurching over toward the den. "You two stay in here," whispered Uncle Bert as he turned to meet Gerald. "What's happening?" Beryl whispered. Amber peeked out of the den. Uncle Bert and Gerald were grunting and snorting at each other. "I can't hear what they're saying," she said. Uncle Bert and Gerald were arguing. They were arguing heatedly. At last, Gerald turned his back on Uncle Bert. He shouted over his shoulder, "I'll be back. You can't change the rules to suit yourself. We'll see what the council has to say." With a sneer, he stomped off. "Oh dear," sighed Uncle Bert as he entered the den. "What a day it's turning out to be." "Is it going to be all right?" asked Amber. "Oh, yes. I'll make it all right, like I should have done before. This time, things have got to change." As Uncle Bert spoke, he seemed to grow larger. There was puffing and panting at the den entrance. Amber said it was Aunt Sissy. "I came as soon as I heard. That old boar Gerald is telling everyone all about it. He's calling a council," she wheezed. "Hello, dear," she added. "You must be Beryl." Beryl had only known one aunt, her Aunt Misery, so she had assumed all aunts would be much the same. She was absolutely fascinated by Amber's Aunt Sissy, who seemed to be the complete opposite of Aunt Misery. Beryl couldn't help staring at Sissy's soft, kind features and her open, honest eyes, and she felt herself warming to Sissy's gushing concern. Beryl totally forgot Aunt Sissy was a wild pig. Although she was hairy, her gentleness shone so brightly that Beryl barely noticed the wildness. Aunt Sissy was by far the most beautiful pig that Beryl had ever seen. "What's all the fuss about?" cried Amber. "Why is there going to be a council?" "We don't have much time," said Aunt Sissy. "Bert, it'll have to come out now. She needs to know. You'd better explain it to her. It's going to be as bad as before." She looked anxiously at Uncle Bert. "Before?" asked Amber. "Come and sit down, Amber, and you too, Beryl," Uncle Bert grunted, "and I shall do my best to explain." Rule number 1. Beryl sat on a tree root next to Amber. The root had been rubbed as smooth as a piglet's skin after years of pigs sitting on it. Uncle Bert sat down opposite them, and even though the mood was serious, Beryl couldn't help feeling a blanket of peace wrap around her. She had never met any adult pigs who had spoken with such patience and understanding as Uncle Bert and Aunt Sissy. They treated her and Amber as their equals, and she wished with all her heart that this could somehow be her home. "It's all down to rule number 1, Uncle Bert explained as he leaned forward. "You see, in the old days, well before I was born, come to think of it, before your grandfather or his grandfather or even his grandfather was born." "Get on with it, Bert," urged Aunt Sissy. "The first rule," Bert went on, "is rule number 1. No other type of animals allowed into the settlement. Of course, this settlement wasn't here back then. There was another settlement, the old settlement over the mountain. There, the number 1 rule originally meant no other type of animal apart from pigs, any pigs. But then the farmers came and set up farms nearby with lots of He darted a guilty eye at Beryl. "I'm sorry, my dear. I mean pink pigs. Some of the pink pigs from the farms escaped and came to live in the settlement. The farmers came looking for them and took them back. But of course, by then they'd seen proper," again, a guilty look at Beryl, "I mean, wild pigs. And that's when they started hunting them. They came and killed whole families, piglets too. No one was safe. Some wild pigs managed to escape, and this settlement was set up. And from then on, in this settlement, rule number 1 meant no other type of animal apart from wild pigs." "Will the farmers come looking for me?" squealed Beryl. "Oh, no, I don't think so," said Uncle Bert. You see, farms are so much bigger nowadays. I've seen them, hundreds and hundreds of pigs, all kept inside. Poor blighters. If one of those escaped, who'd notice? Let alone who'd care? Bert, the pig's feelings, scolded Aunt Sissy. Oh, I'm sorry, my dear. I didn't mean... Anyway, that was my argument before. What do you mean before? Asked Amber. Just then there was a snort at the entrance. An enormous woolly pig leaped into the den, followed by several other slightly smaller pigs. Oh no, that's all we need, muttered Uncle Bert.